It was a day like any other in Mr. Grayson's calculus class. The hum of fluorescent lights, the soft scratch of pencils on paper, and the occasional murmur from students trying to make sense of derivatives. I sat near the back, half-focused, staring out the window when a sudden, harsh beep came through the intercom. The dean's voice cracked through the speakers, shaky and frantic. "Attention, students and staff. We are now in lockdown. This is not a drill. Please secure your classrooms immediately." Mr. Grayson's face paled. He had always been the calm, easygoing type. But the way he moved, quick, deliberate, without a word, sent a panic through the room. He flicked off the lights, casting the classroom into darkness, then motioned for us to gather in the far corner, out of view from the door. My heart was pounding, each thud loud in my ears, as I crouched beside my friends, trying to calm down myself, for what felt like forever. The only sounds were our nervous shuffling and the ticking of the clock. And then, bang. A loud thud echoed down the hallway, followed by heavy, uneven footsteps. At first, we thought it might be a teacher or a janitor. But then came the screaming. "I'll kill all of you!" The voice was guttural, filled with rage, something primal. My blood ran cold as the man's words ricocheted through the halls, closer and closer, followed by the sound of lockers being slammed open. One after the other, metal clanged, doors rattled, and the air felt thick with terror. I glanced around the dark room, barely making out the silhouettes of my classmates. Some had started crying, silent sobs shaking their bodies. Others had their eyes squeezed shut, trying to will themselves somewhere far away from this nightmare. The footsteps paused, right outside our door. I held my breath. Another bang. The door handle rattled violently, and the man screamed again, his voice inches away. "You think you can hide? I know you're in there." My chest tightened as I pressed myself against the wall, my entire body frozen. For a moment, I thought he'd break through the door. Thought we'd be face to face with whoever, or whatever, was out there. But then, without warning, the footsteps moved on. I exhaled slowly, trying to calm the shaking in my hands, but the fear never left. Even as the screams faded down the hall, we knew we weren't safe. Not really. Minutes dragged by, feeling like hours, before the dean's voice returned. "Students, the situation is under control. Stay where you are until further notice." But it didn't feel over. Later, after what seemed like an eternity, we were told it was safe to leave. The intruder, they said, was a disturbed man who had somehow slipped into the building and attacked a staff member. They said he had been hiding in a storage closet for who knows how long before the janitor stumbled upon him. And just as quickly as he had appeared, he vanished, gone before the police could arrive. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said he had a gun. Others said he was a former student who'd lost his mind. But no one knew where he had gone, or if he would come back. The days that followed were filled with uneasy glances, hushed whispers, and constant tension. Every time the door creaked open, my heart would skip a beat. Every time a locker slammed shut, I'd flinch. Weeks passed, and though the fear lessened, it never fully disappeared. The man was still out there somewhere, and with every passing day, a lingering thought haunted me. What if he hadn't left at all? What if he was still here, hidden in some forgotten corner, waiting? We never heard his screams again. But sometimes, when the school was quiet, when the wind howled through the halls, I could swear I heard faint footsteps just beyond the door. I was working late that day, hunched over an old computer in the basement of my high school. The familiar hum of the servers filled the room as I typed away, lost in the tedious task of debugging code. It felt strange being back here. The same hallways I had walked as a student just a few years ago, now working as an intern, fixing the very computers I had once used. The basement was quiet, almost too quiet. No one ever came down here unless something was broken. My shift was nearly over, when the intercom crackled to life. "Attention, all students and staff. The school is now on lockdown. This is not a drill." I froze. Lockdown? I hadn't heard anything unusual before now, but the tension in the dean's voice was unmistakable. Something was very, very wrong. My heart began to race as I quickly switched off the lights, plunging the small office into darkness. The basement had no windows and, worst of all, no door to lock. I pressed myself into the corner behind a metal cabinet, hoping that if anyone came down here, they wouldn't notice me. The minutes dragged on, and the only sounds were my own shallow breaths and the faint murmur of distant movement above me. Then, after what felt like an hour, I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming down the stairs toward the basement. I held my breath, praying that whoever it was would pass by. But the steps stopped just outside the office door. My heart pounded. A figure appeared in the doorway, silhouetted by the faint emergency lights from the hallway. "Hey," the man said, his voice low, shaky. "I'm hiding too." I stayed frozen in the corner, trying to make sense of his words. He stepped further into the room, and that's when I saw him clearly. He was wearing a red shirt and a baseball cap, both streaked with sweat and dust. Something felt off, but I didn't know what to do. I couldn't just stand there and hope for the best. So I cautiously emerged from behind the cabinet. Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He wiped his forehead, his eyes darting around the room. "I was upstairs when everything went down. I saw him, man. The shooter, he's armed. I ran down here to hide, figured it'd be safer." I nodded, trying to mask my unease. We stood in silence for a few moments, and then my phone vibrated in my pocket. I slowly pulled it out, the screen casting a faint glow in the dark room. It was a text from my coworker upstairs. "Shooter in building, wearing red shirt and hat. Be careful. He's dangerous." My hands shaking, I glanced up at the man standing just a few feet away. The red shirt, the hat, it was him. He saw the look on my face. Something wrong? My heart raced and I forced myself to shake my head, slipping the phone back into my pocket. "No, just a message from my boss. They're saying it's clear upstairs now." The lie barely stumbled out of my mouth, but it was enough. His eyes narrowed, suspicion creeping into his expression. He took a step toward me, his hand moving to his waistband. Instinct took over. I bolted. I sprinted toward the stairs, not daring to look back. A deafening crack echoed through the basement, a gunshot, just as I reached the stairwell. The bullet slammed into the doorframe inches from my head, splintering wood and sending me stumbling forward. My body moved on pure adrenaline as I pounded up the stairs, every step a fight for survival. I burst into the hallway, gasping for breath. The school was eerily silent, but I didn't stop running until I saw the flashing blue and red lights outside the main entrance. The police had arrived. I collapsed into the arms of an officer, the world spinning around. Behind me, the sound of more gunfire rang out as they apprehended the man I had just escaped from. The lockdown was over, the shooter was in custody, and the teacher he had injured upstairs would survive. But the horror of that moment, the instant I realized the man in the basement was the shooter, would stay with me long after that night. Even now, I can still feel the cold grip of fear, the echo of that gunshot, and every time I think back to that moment in the dark, I wonder how close I came to never walking out of that basement alive.